Yeah, we're doing the same in APIs. Representative Moskowitz talked about COVID, and we realized very quickly our pharmaceutical industry was overly dependent, in this case again on the PRC, for those APIs. We do have a national defense stockpile for rare earths and critical minerals, but again, as been alluded to, it's woefully inadequate at this juncture. Again, I'm not a complicated person, but if prices are at historic lows, it would seem to me that now would be the time for us to actually be gobbling up that market and creating that national stockpile. Maybe, Undersecretary Fernandez, you were in administration, and again, it doesn't seem like rocket science, and then maybe Senator Manchin, since you're a fellow legislator, why is it that we seem to be lethargic in terms of recognizing? We know the risk, it's not a partisan issue. What's holding us back from actually very intentionally going in and creating the stockpile?
Well, I remember talking about it. Frankly, there was a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. The funding is an issue. And also, I think we've been slow to realize the vulnerability. But I do think your suggestion that we consider it is one that the time is now, because when you're as far behind as we are, you need all hands on deck. You need everyone on board. And unless we move quickly, unless we do what, for example, the senator just mentioned in terms of permitting, it takes us 10 to 20 years to build a mine. We can't continue operating that way. So it's all of the above and all hands on deck.
I think timing, Congressman Bera, timing is the thing, and uncertainty is the cost that no one can factor in. Those are the two things that really, permitting, like you said, from that standpoint, but people jumping in. A lot of people, litigation, know they're going to go through litigation. We're a litigious type of mentality. Good in certain areas for protection, but also overdone in so many areas that stymies it.
Yeah, so there's nothing that prevents us from doing both of these things, right? Because we can build the stockpile immediately if we were to appropriate the right resources and funds, which it sounds like we really ought to do. And then opening up mines, doing the permitting reform will take a little bit longer. But earlier in this Congress, in a bipartisan way, we passed the Fix Our Forest Act. Now, not necessarily the same thing, but it was bipartisan. A lot of us as Democrats got tired of watching our forests burn, certainly in California. It has NEPA reforms in there, et cetera. So we can do permitting reforms, and again, might be easier under a Republican administration.
We have the urgency now that we have with that.
Absolutely.
Right
and
now.
Again, what I would urge my Republican colleagues to do is, now's the time. I'm not asking to meet at the 50-yard line. We don't have the White House. We don't have the majorities in the Senate or the House, but don't take us to the end zone. Like, we can meet at the 35-yard line. We can do this if we're willing to negotiate. And Senator Manchin, you did lead some of these efforts in the Senate. So maybe that is the starting point.
We've got we have some good, we're going to share that with you all, what we had done and what we come close to completing.
Yeah, and we ought to do it. Mr. Fannin, do you want to add anything on the petroleum reserves or the defense stockpile or permitting reform?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge the administration has started to talk about permitting reform and has some executive orders to try to shorten some of these time horizons. I think the point you made about the forest is a good one. You decided to pass this legislation, move this bill, bipartisan bill, because you saw a crisis. And the crisis was real, it was material, it was, the smoke was around your house. People acted. I think we need to, this goes back to an earlier comment, this is a political problem. How do we create that sense of urgency with the American people that the smoke is around the house to create that move? And I think once you do that, then we'll see some action. I think we're starting that now.
Right. Thank you. With that, I'll go and yield back.